Welcome to She's in the Weeds.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Hollis.
We're best friends exploring the intersection of pop culture and the female experience.
Be sure to follow us on socials and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode.
And if you love us, give us that 5-star review.
Nailed it?
I think it's fine.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
All right.
I guess we're recording. Yeah.
Woo.
Looks
We're
like
live.
Hopefully
we're
first
both
virtual.
recording. Yeah.
Just
I know. I have to wear these dorky headphones.
That's
but,
okay.
you know, are those Spice Girl dolls behind you?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Have I never seen those? Do you have all of them?
Yes.
That's very cool.
Kurt got them for me, and he gave me one for like Christmas and then Mother's Day and then my birthday for like the
Oh,
course of a couple years until I got them all.
that's cool.
Yeah.
What a thoughtful gift.
Yes, they're quite nice.
Very nice.
And you know what's really funny is one time I was watching Andy Cohen's Instagram stories. And he was like in his closet at his apartment talking about something. And in the background on the floor, he had all these dolls.
Really?
Yeah.
You're like, God, we're so alike, Andy Cohen.
I know. So obviously we should be friends.
Nice. Heck,
So what's going on? I haven't seen you.
Oh, I know. Oh my
I
gosh.
feel like-
what is?
I haven't seen you in like over a week.
I know, and which feels way
That's a
longer
long
than
time.
a week. Yeah. I've been good. I mean, nothing too crazy has been happening to me outside of just like the normal stuff, work and whatnot. Going on a trip soon. We're going on our trip soonish.
Yeah.
So yeah. How about you? How was your trip?
It was good. We did the old family vacation to Colorado, and you know, I feel like my kids are kind of, I mean, my 2-year-old is turning 3 next month, so I mean, she's a little rambunctious, but my oldest is 6, and so it was just like a really good, fun trip. Like we had a really good time. We did a
Nice.
lot of stuff. We went to Casa Bonita.
Heck yeah.
So that was exciting. Really hilarious. Highly recommend it. I mean, I didn't really know what to expect, but it was a good time. I think if you're in the Denver area and you have the time, definitely expect to spend some money. It's definitely like a tourist trap in that regard, but I personally felt like it was worth it. It was fun. I feel like it's kind of like Las Vegas. Like you should do it one time if you can.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we've talked about it before on the pod. I'm not opposed to doing touristy stuff when I am, in fact, a tourist. You know,
yes,
like
absolutely.
you got to see the stuff that people go to see. Like,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
you're not going to do it every time, but yeah, like you said,
And it's definitely a unique like experience. Like you're not going to have this experience anywhere else, you know? So
Yeah.
it was fun. And you know, when they first opened it, it was like a year to get on the reservation list, but it's not like that now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good
cool.
time.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I've never been to Colorado when it's warm.
Well, it's so
Which
funny because I was talking to our friends that we visited there, and then my sister-in-law, and I was like, you know what? Like, I may never come back in the winter, honestly.
Right?
I think when my kids are old enough to like put them in ski school when we're out there, like have them just like go with an instructor and take lessons and learn to ski. That's what I did when I was a kid. I was about 8 or 9. We were out there for a few days, and the first 2 days I just was with instructor with other kids doing lessons the whole day. And yeah, I learned, and you know, it's like lugging the kids around in the snow and all the
It's a lot of
gear, and they
work.
can't even walk in it. And it's like, unless you can do the snow sports, like sledding only takes you so far.
Yeah.
You
And there's
know?
only so many times you can go down a hill before you're like,
Right.
all right, well, there was 30 minutes.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
in the summer, it's just so great. We went to the Seven Falls waterfall, and like I mean, it's just beautiful. And we hiked, and we did Casa Bonita, and we went to Vale for a day, and like went to the botanical gardens, and like walked around Vale Village, and we went to this place called the North Pole, which is kind of funny. It's basically like the Santa Claus land of Colorado, like the holiday world of Colorado.
Oh, nice.
The kids love that. They like met Santa, like, saw Santa, you know, whenever they'd
I
ride.
know him.
I mean, just so much more that you can do, and it's just so nice. Like, there's nothing like Colorado weather in June. I mean, in the mornings it was like 50 degrees, and then it would get up to like 75, 80 at the hottest part of the day.
Oh,
And
that's
then,
ideal.
yeah, and then as soon as the sun starts to go down behind the mountains, it cools off again, and like it's just great.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to think, we went the last time I went with you. Was your oldest 2? Was she 3 yet?
Yeah, she was 3.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
she
I
was
remember,
3.
I was just like, because I mean, I can only imagine with 2.
It's just
young,
a lot.
It would
and
just
like,
be a lot of work.
like getting it, even just like getting in and out of the car, and like
Yeah,
having
right?
to put the snow gear on once they're out of the car, and then take it off and put them in the car. Like, no, I'm just not
like
doing
I
it.
just got here and I'm exhausted. I haven't
Exactly.
even done anything yet.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Well, cool.
it's just great in the summertime. So next year we're gonna go the same time next year, and I want you to go. Maybe we'll even go back to Casa Bonita, but yeah, do some
never know.
hiking. So I'd like to do like the Pikes Peak train ride. Could be fun,
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I do love a train ride. I'm about to be spending 2 nights on a train ride.
I know, that's kind of wild. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to hear about it.
Me too. Hopefully, all goes swimmingly, but
Yeah.
it should be fine.
We'll tell the listeners.
You know So yeah, I am taking a trip with my mom and my aunt and one of my other aunt's friends. So I'm traveling with 3 ladies. We're going from Chicago to San Francisco on an Amtrak train in a sleeper car. So it's 52 hours on the train, which I think is going to be awesome because it's also like supposed to be a very scenic route. You go through.
Right.
You go through Denver, and it's just like straight across the country, basically. So a couple mountain ranges, right through the prairies and stuff. So
Yeah.
and they have like observation cars where like most of the car is glass, so you can just kind of like chill out. And the food's supposed to actually be pretty good. And we got like one of the first class bedroom cabins. So yeah, I'm excited for that. And then we're spending 3-4 nights in San Francisco, Oakland, technically. My aunt who passed away earlier this year lived out there for a long time. So we're going out there kind of as like a memoriam trip to spread her ashes and then spend a few days. So I am super stoked.
Yeah, that'll be nice. I love San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah, I haven't been since I was in high school. So I'm excited to experience it as an adult and like,
Yeah.
Have a different kind of time and eat some dim sum and
Heck yeah.
yeah, should be good.
That's
I'm really
exciting.
pumped. Oh, thanks.
Okay, so should I get into a quick circle back and then you can fill me in on your spill items?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let us hear it.
Okay, so I just
Circle it
have a quick
right back.
circle back on the Blake and Justin of it all. So she has been awarded her legal fees. So I
Oh.
feel like that's a win. Now, the judge did deny the claim for damages. Fine. I haven't read like all of the details on the decision, so I don't know if there's an explanation as to why he awarded the fees and not the damages. So I will look into that. I had a lot of research to do for our PCQ, so I just read the headline. So that's all I know at the moment. I will take a deeper look at that for next episode, but as of now, that is the conclusion. It is over. It's settled. She has been awarded her legal fees back, which, hey, it's better than nothing. So,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that's a win.
Yeah.
Take what you can get for sure. Like,
absolutely.
seems like after all of that nonsense, like, that feels like a win for sure.
I think so too. And, like I said, I'll look into see if there's an explanation on why the damages weren't awarded. I'll continue to follow it because I am interested to see like what kind of trajectory he is going to take. Like, is he going to do this advocate for, falsely accused men?
yeah.
Like, I'll be interested. Hopefully he just fades into the background and we never hear from him again.
I mean, hopefully he's paying a PR company that's like, absolutely not. Who's like, hey, man, probably not a good idea. Let's just drop it.
I know.
Like,
and
seriously.
Can you imagine he goes on some crusade for some falsely accused guy and then turns out it's not a false accusation, how could you even run that risk?
Right.
I mean,
for real.
I don't know. There's just no way to prove that it's you know what I mean? And I understand that works in the reverse. A lot of times there's no way to prove, like, it is a lot of like he said, she said with those situations. But yeah, that seems like pretty risky that you would be willing to back somebody for being falsely accused when you don't know for sure.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yikes. I don't know. So anyway.
Yeah. And it's just like in this cultural climate, you have to think 10 steps ahead and be like, how do you think that's really going to be perceived?
Right.
Like, are there really enough people who feel that way in the country right now to be like, yes, thank God, finally somebody doing the Lord's work that we all need? I don't know. I mean, I hope not.
I hope not too. Unfortunately, I feel like there's a chance that he could have more support than we would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because there's a lot of, I mean, that incel kind of, because that's
it's
kind
very
of an
manosphere.
incel. Yeah. It's very manosphere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like, how do you go from being your whole shtick being an advocate for women and an ally to women to part of the manosphere?
For real.
Come on.
Real. I know that's what is so damning to me about this whole thing is I feel like it kind of proves him wrong. He's own
a fraud.
Argument wrong. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just like revealed him to be exactly what he is.
Yeah.
Was
for
just
sure.
like a opportunist who's like,
Yes.
oh, you know what? I can jump on this. I can piggyback
Yes.
on this because this is hot. Like, oh, well, the tides are turning.
Absolutely.
Time to jump on the manosphere.
Absolutely. 100%. Oh my God. Okay, tell me about Ariana Grande because I've not seen anything about this.
Well, I've hesitated. I was debating on whether or not we even talk about it because it is all over my algorithm.
Okay.
And she is on tour now. She's doing like a huge tour, like 46 spots or something nationwide. And clips and videos have started surfacing from her first couple of shows. And she's insanely thin. So, of course, it's become just crazy fodder for what has become two camps pretty much, which is, I feel like the one camp is we can't stand by and not talk about women's bodies anymore if, you know, these celebrities and role models are up in front of the public and young girls. That's what everyone's using is like, well, this can't be a role model for young girls looking so emaciated. And just we're pretending like nothing's happening, like we're not seeing it. And they say, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric like, I'm concerned about her health, you know, we're concerned about the message this is sending to people. And then I feel like the other camp is we can't talk about women's bodies like that. If we're going to say we can't talk about women's bodies negatively for being too large, then we also can't talk about them negatively for being too thin.
Right.
That we really need to take a stance of neutrality and that, you know, the gauze of, oh, we're worried about her health is very thin and that's not actually what it is. It's really just, you know, internalized misogyny that we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I fall. I think I fall somewhere in the middle.
I think
me.
And I think quite frankly that's the right answer.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest, I will raise my hand and say, do I personally, like mentally and emotionally care about Ariana Grande's health? Probably not. Probably not. However, I do care very much about the message that it's sending. So that's kind of where I fall. Like, and I don't mean to sound like harsh or cold when I say that. I just like don't have a personal connection to her.
Right. You're not like I don't know what her fans are called, but you're not like an Ariana Grande fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it was somebody in my personal life, absolutely, there would be something coming from a place of concern for that person. It's not so much about concern for that person for me as it is concern for the bigger picture and the message that it's sending. People want to be so black and white about things, and I just don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, and I feel like especially when it comes to this topic, like this one is so gray, and there's so many, you know, layers to it because on one hand, I don't think it's the public's job to be like, somebody swoop in and save Ariana Grande. Although, you know, it is tragic to see because it's, you know, there's enough video and photo to be like, it's hard to make the argument that like, oh, she was just caught at a bad angle or in a bad light or something.
Right.
Where it's like, clearly we've been watching her get smaller and smaller all through like the Wicked tour.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's
and not
like,
just
whoa.
her.
Yeah.
It's not just her too.
It's also like bad timing because we are on a trend where we are watching a lot of celebrity women just get thinner and thinner in front of our eyes and it being accepted. And yeah, and I do think there is validity to the fact that like, are we just doing what we always do, which is, oh, here's an easy target. Here's a woman who's clearly struggling and in need. And we're going to say,
yeah,
well, it's your fault. You are an example now.
Right.
You know, and you have a responsibility to the world. You know, I see it more of just like, I feel really bad for her that she doesn't have anybody, obviously. Well, and we don't know that. Again, I think we're making so many assumptions because I was going to say she doesn't have anybody in her corner telling her like, hey, something's wrong, but we don't know that.
They may be. Yeah.
She may be, and she's an adult and she can make her own decisions and she could very well just be choosing to ignore it. And I do think there's validity to that argument that like, it's not our job to decide when women should or should not be, you know, an example or not.
Right. And it's like, not our job to diagnose people either.
Exactly. True. Yeah. And I mean, we went through this with, Chadwick Boseman. He passed away from cancer a couple of years ago, and he had made a couple of public appearances and was really gaunt and skinny, and everybody came for him and was like, you know, what's he doing? What's wrong with him? Blah, blah, blah. And he was dying of cancer, and he just hadn't shared it yet.
Exactly.
So it's like it's speculation and making assumptions. I'm not even like a huge Ariana Grande fan, but I just can't help but like empathize or put myself in her shoes and think like, man, how tough would it be? You're going on tour to like share your gift with the world and everybody's just like, you're a bad example. How dare you get out and do your job? You know what I mean? Like it's just, and again, it's that side to parasocial relationships that I think is really sick, that people think they need to take to the internet and tear her down and say, how dare you? Like, you're a bad example for women and for girls. Like, I don't know. That feels harsh to me. Yeah. Even though I can relate to that because it is,
because there's some truth to it. Yeah.
Because and it's hard to continue to watch people that we're supposed to be idolizing and that are setting the beauty standards waste away. You know, it is frustrating.
Right.
But it's also like, I don't know if that response is the way to handle it either.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. And I think part of the problem is I do think there's a lot of ways to have the conversation about the bigger picture without zeroing in on specific people. Yeah. And I think sometimes that's where we struggle because it's easy to point out the specific people to make your point. But I think also at the end of the day, we kind of all know sometimes who the specific people are without saying it. And we can see the trends. We can see what's happening without saying this person, this person, this person, and without going online and tearing down specific things about specific women's bodies.
Yeah.
And I think if we want change and progress, we can't just stop talking about it, but I think we need to change the way we have the conversation. And I think we're getting better, but I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah. I also just keep coming back to like, I think the strongest form of protest is resistance, and that like acknowledging, like, for instance, you see someone like Ariana Grande, we look at her with empathy. We say, wow, she may be a famous superstar, but that is not what everyone should be striving, what the body everyone should be striving for.
Right.
And I'm going to choose to acknowledge that and resist that. The same with, you know, seeing a lot of beauty standards. It's like, but it is the catch-22 of being a woman, is that is hard. It's really hard to do. And that like you're influenced to subscribe to those standards that you see in front of you.
Right.
And that's why I was questioning whether we even talk about it on the pod, because I was like, maybe the best reaction is to just not react at all, is to just not even talk about it and perpetuate a conversation that is maybe not helpful to a person who's struggling.
And I think my stance on that is that I agree with you that I think resistance is probably the best form of protest, but it's also, for me, when I think about like my daughters or like the younger generation, sometimes I don't know that resistance is like super evident. And it's also, I may be resisting because I don't have that body type, but I also may just not have that body type. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like the dialogue around it and talking about it is a more evident form of resistance that young people need to hear sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes just not subscribing isn't as obvious, I think, to those very impressionable young people.
Yeah. So then do you think those conversations are conversations that should be happening within a family, from mother to daughter and between friends? Or do you think these are the kind of conversations people should be having on social media? Because I think that's another element that like gets really hairy for me, is that like people are taking to social media as these like social justice warriors of, we need to be more loud about this. We can't stand for this anymore. And like, I can't disagree to a point, but then I feel like, how do you separate the human from that, that we're talking about?
Yeah.
And do it in a dignified way. I don't know. It's been a real
I think that's the hard
internal
part.
battle for me.
No, I hear you.
I
I think it is for, maybe not everyone, but I think it is for everybody that feels the way that we feel. I mean, that's the part that we haven't quite figured out yet, that I do think, conversations need to be happening within homes, from parents to children, amongst friends. But at the same time, you can't always count on that either. And unfortunately, I don't think that those are the most influential conversations, unfortunately. I really don't. Yeah. What I think we need is people like Kate Winslet. We need people like that having the conversation publicly. Yeah. And she wasn't talking about a specific person. She's talking about herself. And we do need a lot of these people to be setting the example. And we talked about this with Amy Schumer, where it's like, is it fair that they have to take on that responsibility? Maybe it's not fair, but it's a reality that they are influential and they are shaping a lot of this. And so, I do think it's important that the conversation be had publicly by the people who are influencing it and by the people who are being influenced, like me and you and our kids. I just think we do have to work on progressing and changing how we have the conversation. And unfortunately, I think there's just a lot of people that are out there tearing her down just to tear her down, and they don't really care about the message or the conversation.
Yeah.
No,
for sure.
I don't know what to do about those people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
there is nothing to be done. I feel like they're always going to exist. Even if social media wasn't a thing.
I know.
Those people are still out in the world, just operating on a different platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to be tabloids and late night talk show hosts and interviewers. It used to be all those people, journalists. Now it's your average Joe on the internet with, user 34567, Yeah. And I think, I'm not saying that people like you and I don't sometimes fall into the trap of like maybe talking negatively about somebody trying to make a point. It happens. And, we can probably do better to have our conversations in a different way. But I do think it's important that it's had publicly. I do. I don't know.
Yeah. I know. I'm so curious to see if and how she responds, how it will affect the rest of her tour. Because that's another thing with these kind of critiques of people is like, how does one respond? And what is the public and community actually asking for from
like,
this
what do they
person?
expect?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, do they want a response? Do they just want to see change? You know, I hope that she can finish her tour in like a safe way and it doesn't like
Right.
affect her negatively. And, you know, it would be interesting to hear like what she thinks about all of the
No, for sure.
feedback. But I would imagine, like I said before when we were talking about the lawsuit, like I think a lot of times, you know, PR people will not allow celebrities to make responses like that because it is so, you never know how people are going to react to it.
Exactly. I know. I feel like anything even slightly controversial, the PR people are like, nope.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
move
Do
on
not
as quickly
respond.
as possible.
Yeah. But anyways, I don't want to psychoanalyze her too much.
Right.
I feel like I'm always in the middle on things.
Yeah.
And this was one where it was really like, yeah, I was, you know, people were taking to Instagram with their stances. And I heard a couple really, really well versed ones on each side where I was like, yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. And then you hear the rebuttal and you'd be like, yeah, absolutely, yes, I agree with you.
No, I know. I feel
like
this is very similar to the conversation we had surrounding the Amy Schumer deletion of all the photos of her pre like weight loss and all of that. And yeah, I remember watching videos about it and I did the same thing where it was like, yes, that's it. And then you hear the opposite take and it's like, yeah, that's also it.
Yeah, and I think it's just like we have to decide, are we judging them as a human being or are we judging them as a celebrity example, like role model, you know? Because I think then the judgments are very different. And
unfortunately, they are both.
Yeah, I know. So it's like, how do you...
They are both. Yeah. No, I know. Yeah.
So wish her the best. I hope she like is okay, and if she isn't, she gets better. But
yeah, I know.
It would be nice to like for this trend to swing back.
I know.
On the opposite edge of the pendulum.
It makes it hard too with the whole, you know, GLP-1s and all of that, and not so much themselves because it's a medication that people need sometimes, and I get that, but the marketing of them. It feeds into all of that and where we are with that. And that's scary. And yeah, it's top of mind for a lot of people. And it's something that's really taken off and is becoming so mainstream that it definitely feels like something that needs to be talked about. It's just hard to navigate the conversation. We can move on.
Yeah.
We can move on. Okay.
Cool.
Should we get into reality TV? Are we doing reality?
Yeah, let's do reality. Reality check. Where are we at? Where do we leave off?
Okay. We left off with the reunion. So I think...
right.
I mean... Do we just go right into the bonus episode?
Might as well, because I think...
Everybody's talked to death about the reunion. So what were your thoughts on the bonus episode?
Well, my initial thoughts were just, thank God they did this, because we literally got nothing out of them on the reunion.
Yeah.
It was just like,
this is what it should have been.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I hope Lindsay Hubbard got an extra check for literally, like... making that
being the Andy of the bonus episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
And getting stuff out of her. And like she was 100% right. Amanda needs somebody in her life to be like, where are her friends at? You know, like where are her friends? Maybe they've been there. Maybe we just don't see that. But like somebody needs to be like, girl, what are you doing? So thank God Mother Hubbard was there to do that and give it to her straight a little bit. Yeah. And I just feel like, man, West is such...
What a loser.
I just feel like we were all so fooled. And you know, I saw these this video come up on my feed of these like three black women, which I thought was interesting, talking about how like, yeah, I mean, we were all fooled. We all thought West was, you know, he was swagged out, he was fine as hell. He, you know, I think one of them even said they like met him at some event and that he came up and was like, you know, was super charismatic, and it was just like, yeah, that like, you know, we were all fooled and that he was a charming, charismatic guy, but like, man, And even on that thing, I was just like, you listen to him talk and you're like, he starts to creep in a little bit. And then you have to be like, no. But he treats people terribly. And like some of the things he said on talking to Kyle was just like, you are such a bonehead.
I have never had bigger ick in my life. His conversation with Kyle, I was just like bad. So icked out. And it was one of those things where it's like, you finally saw him for really truly what he is. And I feel like we all knew that guy in our 20s. Like we all knew that guy in our 20s. And like when you're in your 20s, you're like, whatever. And like you just kind of write it off as like, oh, he's a player. And like, I'm not saying all guys in their 20s are like that. They're not. Like it was still a specific type of guy, but to still be that guy at 31 years old or whatever you are, and to be that calculated and be that manipulative, and the whole lying to Miha about saying he couldn't say because he would get fired that he had a girlfriend. And somebody finally said, bad. I can't remember who it was, if it was somebody online or if it was in the episode, somebody finally said, like, if a guy is keeping you a secret, doesn't matter what the reason is, like,
yeah, it's bad.
Mean, it's just so gross. And I was just looking at him on that couch like, you are such a child. Like, like, are you kidding me?
I mean, that's what it is. Just a kid, like, masquerading as a full-grown adult, and like a cool one at that, where it's just like,
right.
No, dude, you know what's cool is treating people like human beings.
Right. And like it must come from some like massive insecurity that he has. I feel like that's what it was when we were in our 20s and guys were like that. It's just being insecure. Him and Amanda are the same. Like they thrive on that validation. They're deeply insecure and thrive on that validation. And it's sad, but it's like, God, like get your shit together, you guys, honestly. Like go do the work, do the therapy, like, and I feel like even though we finally got all the answers and what we needed from the reunion, none of it was surprising. Like when Amanda was explaining to Lindsay, like, I was in this horrible relationship and like I needed to feel good. Like we all knew that's what it was. She was feeding that need to like feel something and feel good. And it's not so much that's the problem. Like I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's that she didn't have to choose Wes to do that with. And she's a full grown woman and she knows that. She could have gone and found that same feeling somewhere else with someone else.
100%. And I definitely felt bad for her because I could relate to that feeling, like you just said.
We all can.
Like we all can empathize with that. But yeah, I think that is the distinction, that like there are many, like you said, many men that could do that. And I think what part of it that she maybe hasn't even realized about herself is that part of the validation is that like he didn't choose Sierra, he chose her.
Exactly.
And like, there's like a little bit where you're like, Sierra's the hottest, most
100%.
beloved woman on the planet right now, and it feels good to be like the one who got the guy that couldn't get Wes.
100%.
You know?
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think that's the little piece of truth.
That's the part that's
maybe, that maybe she hasn't even. She probably knows it deep down, but hasn't admitted it to herself. Yeah, and can't like say that out loud, because then that would, no, that would mean you're admitting that there's a part of you that's bad.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you're whole bad. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's the difference between like guilt and shame, right? Is like you can feel guilty about that. I don't think shame is beneficial in any form.
Yeah.
But that's a hard one to accept about yourself, is because that's a pretty bad thing to feel and then act on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's one thing to want it. It's another thing to actually like do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where the distinction comes in. Absolutely. Is that I think probably we could all even maybe relate to feeling that a little bit of like that competitiveness of like, oh, like I got him. But it's the acting on it. Yeah. And it's all of the details surrounding the situation. Like it is your good friend. And it's the perfect storm. And she knew that. And yeah,
It also just makes it feel like that friendship was completely fraudulent. Like that wasn't a friendship,
At
and it
least
was
to
all
her.
for show. Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. As an adult, there are just certain things
You just can't.
you just don't do.
Yeah. So anyway, I did see something online where Lindsay posted some stuff saying that there was a scene cut out of the bonus episode where she tells Amanda that she can't be friends with her, at least not for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Also, one thing is I thought it was hilarious when West walked into Kyle's apartment and the dogs were like, "Oh, hey, other dad."
I know. Kyle's been, kudos to him for being like funny and
He was like,
just like having a
she
very
obviously
good.
knows you.
I know. And I also saw a clip that was like, red flag when a guy treats a dog like this, because he was just like so annoyed by the dog Wes, and just like not that he was like beating it or anything, but just like you can just tell like this guy sucks.
I also think he was trying to like not interact, like
and make
didn't
it
want
look
to
like
be
they didn't know
obvious
each other.
that- yeah, so he was just like yeah.
What? Calm down. Yeah. But
Oh
still.
dear. Okay, in the city, let's see.
I feel like what's his face? People love that guy, Kenny.
You know how I
I
feel
feel
about
like-
Kenny.
I know.
Also, like, he was upset about, I have this note here, and I think it's from when he was talking to Kyle, and you know, he was going around like reprimanding everyone for you know, bringing up the thing about the spark or whatever. And then he like had that conversation with Kyle about it when Kyle's actually the one that was like spreading it.
Yeah.
Fine. But he was I think in his confessional, he was all like, you know, I was talking about how great Whitney is and everything. And then the one thing that, you know, gets spread around is this thing I said about the spark. And I was like, yeah, you can talk about how great she is all you want. But if you're going to start talking about how you don't know if she's the one after you moved her across the country, that's going to be the main takeaway, because no one cares how great the person is if you're saying she's not the one.
Yeah.
Like,
I know. This is where I break down with this show, where it's like, you had this conversation in front of a camera.
Exactly.
This was not a private conversation you had with Kyle where you were like, hey, man,
exactly.
I need to talk. Don't tell anybody about this.
Yeah.
If you say it in front of the camera, I think people think it's fair game to talk about it.
Exactly.
Like,
and it is.
What,
and maybe
what else is it for?
I know. And maybe that's part of him being like, you know, a first seasoner. He hasn't quite figured it out yet. But yeah, and then I had written here too, like the way he treated Lindsay versus the way he treated Kyle. Like he was so, you know, amped up and like treating her so poorly over it. And then him and Kyle, he's just like, oh, dude, like, yeah, it's cool. Like has this like totally calm conversation with Kyle where he's not like belittling him and like gaslighting
he totally
him.
gives misogynist vibes for
Yes,
sure.
I'm sorry, but yes. Yeah. Ugh. Okay, should we move on to the Valley?
Yeah.
Okay.
What happened?
There was all of the fighting with Kristen and Luke, because Kristen has
right.
First of all, I think she's probably, not to diagnose, but I think she's probably suffering from a little PPA, postpartum anxiety. I think she already struggles with anxiety and talks about that openly. But, you know, it can really be exacerbated in postpartum, and you can have very specific postpartum anxiety symptoms like intrusive thoughts and like things that really make you not want to be away from your baby, which seems to be like maybe something that she's going through a little bit. And, you know, they've talked about how even previous to having babies, she's never been a good traveler. Like she gets travel anxiety. And so there was a lot of them fighting. And then Luke making that comment to whoever he's talking to. I can't remember if it's Jesse or Zach or who. And he's like, if things keep going this way, there won't be a wedding.
Yeah.
And he's
not a great thing to say out loud.
No. And listen, I understand this is a difficult time. It just is. But I feel like, I hate to say this, like, it's not that his feelings aren't valid, but I really just don't think he's giving her enough grace. And, like...
Yeah, I really also don't think it's been that long.
No!
To be like,
the baby's
I'm calling off,
4
threatening
months
calling off the
old.
wedding. I know, and you're going to Mexico with it? I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad parenting decision, but I'm saying you better expect for things to be not a regular vacation.
No, I know.
And for things to be heightened. Like, take your baby to Mexico, great. But, like, you also got to understand this is not going to be Kristen as old Kristen hanging out in Mexico.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know what you
I just
expected.
think his expectations are so skewed.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I
for
just,
sure.
yeah. And I do think Kristen is having maybe a harder time than what is average. I mean, it is hard. Not everybody suffers from PPA and PPD, and I do think she is. And when that is at play, it's going to be difficult to navigate. And I don't know. I just think maybe he's not really grasping sort of the severity of the situation with that.
Well, yeah, I think he just probably has an unrealistic expectation of like how long postpartum lasts too. Because I think he probably thought like, 6 weeks, we're going to be back to our normal perfect selves, and that's just not the case. I also forgot that she's 42 and he's like 35.
Yes.
And I completely forgot about that. I also, I don't know, I have the data on this. So I'm completely maybe making this up, but I would imagine postpartum symptoms are harder the older you get.
Probably.
Like, I would imagine they're more severe and like it's a little bit harder to cope.
Probably.
And like go back to a lifestyle that maybe you were already done with anyways.
Exactly.
And now you're certainly done with now that you have a baby,
Yeah.
Which obviously they're maybe in just a little bit different time zones as it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know. And you would think that that would be something you would talk about ahead of time, knowing that going in, but
yeah. And like he seems a little bit to me like, I don't know. Again, I don't want to like psychoanalyze too much. Why can't we just pretend everything's fine and like brush everything under the rug and like you're making too big of a deal out of everything and my feelings matter too? Like that kind of like, baseline, just you should just be able to deal, you know?
No, I know
like,
for sure. And it's hard to like articulate without invalidating him as like a human being and a new father. And like, it's not, I don't want to do that because it's not that it's not hard for him too. I just think that, he's just not fully there.
Yeah, and not to say that like some of the things she said were like hurtful, and I can imagine like she was, she is who she is. She flings it hard, and she probably said some things that were like exaggerated and not true, and would sting in the moment for sure.
It also seems like she's able to recognize it, and we've seen a couple of times where she's like, I don't really think that though. Which I do think is helpful because a lot of times I feel like people kind of double down and they don't want to admit that like they don't mean that. And so I do feel like that's where it might be a little more of like the PPA kind of situation. And I don't know.
That's what I thought was interesting is that because at that point, almost at the end of the episode, he was like, what sucks is that she never like apologizes the next day. She never comes back and was like, hey, I don't think you're a bad dad. I flew off the handle. Like, I'm sorry. It's like, it's like after so long, I start to think, she means it. And I think we did see that one scene where they like sat on that swing and talked and she was kind of like, I don't feel this way. It's just,
that's what's interesting is I feel like we've seen her say it. Maybe it was just that one time.
Yeah.
And then he seems to be struggling with the fact that maybe she's not saying it enough. I don't know. So it's kind of conflicting.
Yeah. And like, who knows what's going on when the cameras aren't there,
right?
And like how much is happening and
yeah. I'm glad
because I can't lie. If I had a 4-month-old baby and my husband was going out and getting drunk, coming home, even once or twice a week, I'd be like,
absolutely
what
not.
Is your problem? Yeah. Like,
are you kidding?
Infant child.
It's just not something that you're doing on the reg anymore. And I think people have maybe people just have a hard time accepting that. I don't know.
Yeah. Accepting that life is different now.
Yeah.
It's not going to be,
Yeah. I don't know. I am glad that Brittany dumped that loser though.
Oh my God. What a loser.
Seriously. asking
it's
her
so-
for money to take off work.
And I mean, everybody knew it. He
Ugh.
had loser
Yeah.
written all over him from day one.
Yeah.
I just like, it's so funny how some people just like rose-colored glasses, I guess. You just can't see it when everybody else is like,
I know. Well, and I thought about the thing that Lena Dunham said in her memoir, and then in that interview where she talks about like how these experiences build up in you, and then people who like are predatory
you're
type
more
people
vulnerable.
like
Yeah.
recognize that vulnerability in you. And that's almost kind of what, I can't remember if it was Zach or whoever was saying, like, yeah, Brittany needs some space from this thing with Jax because she's going to attract that type of person until she's fully healed from this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like she kind of, hopefully she learned that in that situation, because she did drop him pretty quick, which I was like, good.
Yes.
Good.
She didn't
let it go.
I was
on
afraid
too
she was
long.
going to dig her heels in and like.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Well, and the biggest red flag too was that he was trying to boyfriend up immediately.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, why? He's
Yeah,
like, oh,
he's
I'm her
a clout
boyfriend.
chaser. Get out of here.
Yeah, for sure. Gross.
Gross. Yeah. Okay. Should we move into the weeds?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. So we are doing our first historical pop culture queen of the month.
Woo.
We are doing Sylvia Plath. The reason I chose her is because there is a book of her poems published. It actually came out last month, I believe. It's called The Poems of Sylvia Plath, edited by Amanda Golden and Karen Kukil, not Kukil. It was published in May of 2026, and it's a 1,000-page volume that draws on decades of research and nearly doubles the content of previous collected poems. So there's a lot of like previously unpublished work in it.
Oh, cool.
And, you know, she's one of those authors that's had a lot of stuff published posthumously because, you know, she died very tragically, very young. So, yeah, it's exciting that things continue to come out and we get to read more and learn more about her. I actually didn't know that much about her before doing research for this episode. You know, I knew she had written The Bell Jar. I've never read The Bell Jar. Have you read it?
Mm-mm.
I will be reading it now.
Nice.
And I've never been like a huge poetry fan, you know. I read a lot. I love to read. I'm a big literature fan, but you know, it's the only novel she ever published. And again, like she really didn't have a lot of work published while she was alive. So yeah, I'm excited to read it.
We should both read it and then talk about it on the pod.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love to. Maybe we can read it when we're in Mexico. Well, that's a long time from now, but okay, so we'll just get into it. So she was born October 27th, one day after my birthday in 1932. So she's a Scorpio queen. She was born to Otto Emil Plath, who was a German immigrant. So she was a first generation American, and he kind of transformed himself from like a working class German immigrant into this sort of like intellectual professor of biology and entomology at Boston University. And I think that was like a really important thing to him and like prideful thing to both him and his wife, is that they kind of escaped this like immigrant stigma and like really kind of transcended classes. Like that was important to them.
Oh, yeah.
And because he was this intellectual professor, there was a lot of pressure for academic achievement in the family. Her mother, Aurelia Frances Schober Plath, was an American born to Austrian immigrant parents, and she was also like very ambitious and intelligent. She had been Otto's student, of course, before becoming his wife at 21 years his junior. So,
oh boy. Okay,
yeah.
Otto.
Pretty typical for that time.
Yeah.
And I think it was rare in the late 20s and early 30s to have a woman studying at a university.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd imagine.
And she had actually been a graduate student studying English and German literature. So, yeah, not super common. And then probably more common that those women in those universities married men that they met there, right? Mm-hmm. So naturally, she gave up her academic career to support him after their marriage in 1932, and then very shortly after Sylvia was born. So Otto was very involved in his like bee studies. He studied a lot about bees, and academic pursuits were like kind of all he cared about. And then Aurelia was kind of caught up in the duality that a lot of women face even now about wanting to still like pursue her interests, but being obviously tied down by domestic duties and like raising kids and sort of having that snubbed out for her. I think it manifested in a way in which she really pushed Sylvia for that. You know, she kind of living vicariously through her daughter. And so there was pressure coming from like both sides, both parents. And there was just like an enormous focus on intellectual achievement, academic achievement in the household.
Yeah, that would suck to be like, yeah, you can get an education. You can't do anything with it. Like,
no,
you get an education, but you're going right back to the kitchen where you belong.
No, 100%.
Like, that would almost be worse. Like,
no, absolutely. And it becomes a central theme in Sylvia's life and her way of thinking. And it really shapes a lot of her personality and kind of her writing. And we'll get into it more, you know, as she gets older. But yeah, I mean, it was extremely influential, not just her personal experience with her parents, but sort of the societal expectations and roles of women in general at that time. Okay. So her mother nurtured her curious mind and paralleled her love of literature and academics in her parenting. And Sylvia was reading by age 4. She was writing poems and short stories by age 6. And so even though there was this huge pressure and encouragement and nurturing from her parents, she was obviously like very naturally gifted. I mean, reading by 4 and just a naturally gifted writer as well. Everything revolved around academics and the routine of her father's work. They enrolled her in special programs, and they really pushed the idea that value was equated to academic achievement.
where are they living? Sorry,
Massachusetts. So Winthrop, Massachusetts is where they live until she's about 8 years old when her father passes away. And she also developed a love for the ocean living there, which is a prominent feature in a lot of her writing, the ocean. And she talks about it literally and also like metaphorically and as like sort of the ocean of the mind and the flow of thoughts. So in 1940, when she's 8 years old, her father dies suddenly at age 55 from complications of diabetes. And, you know, I think especially back then, there wasn't a lot of respect for like the medical community and doctors. That wasn't like a respectable job to have. And I think there was a lot of like views of having these ailments and different things was like a weakness, and you really didn't want anyone to know. You didn't talk about it. You didn't take treatment seriously. It was sort of like just ignore it. And so he kind of refused to like really acknowledge and treat his diabetes. And that is something that I think contributes to Sylvia's processing of his death. She really struggles with this. And I think she really struggles with the fact that maybe there could have been prevention had he not done that. She starts to really see it as like a deliberate abandonment of her and her mother. And that, yeah, she really takes his death hard. And she talks about it later on in therapy, and we'll kind of revisit it later on when she's an adult. But it's a very significant event for her, especially too with her father. Not only was he her father, but he was her first audience, and the measure by which she judged herself with her work and her writing. And suddenly, not only was he gone as her physical father, but so was his approval.
Oof, yeah, that would be tough.
Yeah, so then I wrote here, so naturally daddy issues that become lifelong struggles that fueled her creativity along with her mental health issues and psychological issues. So then, of course, her mother had to go to work to support the family, and they ended up moving. And this is also a time when her mother really became very dedicated to highlighting Sylvia's achievements and became kind of like her manager, preserving like every piece of writing. And I think this is also why we have like such an extensive archive of like her journals and letters that she wrote to people. She's a lot of correspondence with her mom. They have like all of her journals from when she was very young. And I think her mom intentionally kept all of that stuff, knowing that, you know, she had this special gift and that her writing was so incredible. There's some discourse around how her obsession with kind of archiving Sylvia's writing and work served as a way to fill the void of the loss of her husband. Like it was sort of manifesting in that way. And while that's well-intentioned, it also kind of created this complex for Sylvia that love was conditional and worth was based on achievement and failure was not an option. So, of course, she's an exceptional student in school. She's winning prizes and recognition in writing and literature. She, along with many other people who are extremely intelligent and very creative, she struggled with some of the more like normal aspects of like social life. She was well liked and had friends, but there was also sort of this idea that she was special that kind of like set her apart. And sometimes I think that can create sort of a complex as well of this, like having to live up to this, like, oh, I'm special, I'm gifted, and having to like live up to that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pressure from everywhere.
Yeah. And that she was different from her peers, you know, and that she was destined for this greatness and that she felt like that was maybe unrelatable to her peers, or her peers were not able to relate to her and she was not able to relate to them in that way. And that she kind of developed some anxiety around this. I think when she started school is where the first sort of bubblings of anxiety really started. She had a complicated relationship with her father's memory as well. And he became this like mythical creature in her mind in which she both longed for approval from, but also resented. And this is where she really starts to develop that idea of the intentional abandonment. And it became intertwined with the direction of her writing. And that's kind of how we know this, because we can see it through her writing. And it really informs the way in which she conducts herself in relationships later on, specifically with men and authority, as well as her mental health struggles. So by the time she graduated high school in 1950, she had really established herself as one of the most promising young writers of her generation. And I mean, she's only in high school. She gets a full ride scholarship to Smith College, which is one of the most prestigious women's colleges in the country. And so now she's like kind of in this group of more of like her peers, you know, where she's feeling like she fits in a little bit more. Obviously, the women there have a similar level of dedication to achievement. However, she also understands and gets the idea that, yes, some of the women are there for academic achievement and career paths, but a lot of them were there as sort of a finishing school. The idea is that you have this sophisticated pedigree, which you then leverage to secure a wealthy and powerful husband.
It's like Mona Lisa Smile. Did you ever see that movie with Julia Roberts?
You know, I can't remember. If I have seen it, I don't remember anything about it, but I like remember the movie in terms of like trailer and the poster.
It's such a good one.
Is it? Which
I feel like it flew below the radar. Kirsten Dunst is in it. A bunch of really good actors are in it, and it's like that's the
whole plot
main theme, of like, oh, we're all going to this women's college, but like, you know, Kirsten Dunst is there, and she's just trying to get a husband, and then she's the one who finally like sees the light and flips, and there's like, it's really good.
I'll have to check it out. When is it take place in the past or like?
Yeah. Like fourth 20s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Maybe later, like 40s, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's good.
I'll have to watch that. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, and just, for sources, I obviously did some internet research, but I watched 2 documentaries. I watched like this kind of educational documentary. It was a YouTube documentary. I can't remember the name of it. And then I watched a documentary called Inside the Bell Jar, which came out in 2018, and it's really good. And this was a quote from somebody talking in that documentary, and it says, the expectation with a lot of these women at Smith and other colleges was really that you were being educated so you would have a very intellectual household, that you bring up your children that way, and that was an expectation of a lot of these wealthier, more powerful men, that's what they looked for in a wife. So while she is now amongst more of her peers, there really isn't a lot of them that have the same ambition that Sylvia has. I mean, she wants to be a writer. Like the world is her oyster, or she wants it to be. And she's not concerned about finding a husband. So even though she's amongst her peers, she's still different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she becomes a part of the creative writing program, and naturally she excelled at academics. Her writing's developing and improving. She's winning awards. She's gaining recognition. Then she goes to New York. And this is kind of the catalyst. It's the catalyst for her kind of mental health crisis, coupled with the fact that she's not processing her father's death well still. It's also the catalyst for The Bell Jar. And it's a kind of a semi-autobiographical book. It's a fiction novel, but Esther, the main character, is Sylvia. And there's a lot of characters in the book that are based on people in her real life. And there's a lot of scenarios in the book that, she's fictionalizing it, but it really is about her. And so this summer of 1953 in New York is really a big turning point. So in the summer of 53, between her junior and senior year, she's selected as a guest editor for Mademoiselle magazine, which was like the it women's magazine of the time. It was basically like the Cosmopolitan or the Vogue, more like the Vogue probably of that time. It was a competitive and prestigious, basically like an internship. So there was several women that won, and they get to go and they get to be guest editors, and they're working alongside professional writers and editors. They get to be there for like a month. It's all expenses paid. They even got bonuses like ballet tickets, and were able to like go visit the salons and get their hair done and things like that. They were attending all these parties. And so they really got to experience like all the glamour of an urban professional life that they'd only seen in movies and magazines. And I think this was like, she gets this internship, and it's like, she's like, this is it. I'm going to go to New York. It's going to be great. Like, I'm going to see the path forward, like what lies ahead for me. And so at one point, and this is kind of an aside, but I think it's just an interesting point to make just about how women's lives were at this time. So Sylvia is writing letters home to her mom, and she's talking about this dance that they threw at the magazine, and all the girls are there, and they have gentlemen to be their table companions. So the magazine like sets up these guys to come and be their table companions. And this woman is interviewed inside the Bell Jar several times. She's like a talking head, and she was another one of the women that had won the internship as well and was there with Sylvia. And so she's talking about how, they're at the table with these guys, and she went out on the town with her companion afterward. And she's talking about how she's not accustomed to drinking, and she drank quite a lot that night. And she starts to say something about, I think men take for granted. And then she stops and she says, oh, I don't want to say that. And then she says, I ended up back at his apartment with him. I stayed the weekend with him, and I came home pregnant. And she says, I gave the baby away. And she says, So, you know, there's a man out there, 65 years old, and then she gets choked up and she just stops talking. And while that doesn't have anything directly to do with Sylvia, I think it just speaks to that time.
Yeah.
You know, I have some notes here kind of about how Sylvia felt while she was in New York. And this is from correspondence back home and journals and things. And she says, I just bumped from my hotel to work and to parties and from parties to my hotel and back to work like a numb trolley. I guess I should have been excited the way most of the other girls were, but I couldn't get myself to react. I felt very still and very empty, and the way the eye of a tornado must feel moving dully along in the middle of the surrounding hollow below. And there's someone else in the documentary quoted to say that she kind of felt corralled into the literary realm of women's work, which is fashion. And I think she was kind of disappointed by the lack of substance of the work. And she gets there and she kind of starts to realize, like, at one point they're doing a photo shoot of what the women want to be when they quote unquote grow up. And like one of the women poses with an ear of corn because she wants to marry a farmer. And one of them, right. And one of them poses with a hat because she wants to design hats. And I can't remember what they all are, but they're all these kind of what we consider to be women's roles and work. And Sylvia's there because she wants to be a poet, you know? And so
Yeah.
I think she's kind of getting this idea of like, oh, wait, like, is this not possible for me? Like, what am I actually doing here? Like, I was so excited about this. And there's a lot of talk about it being post-war America. And there's a comment a woman makes who was a friend of Sylvia's. And she says, you know, women were doing all of these extraordinary things during wartime. And that was being encouraged because it was needed. And then we slip into the post-war era of prosperity and white picket fences and green lawns and family and procreation. And suddenly women are no longer needed and it's time to put them back in their place. And so there's a lot of talk of that, this post-war era of America. And at one point, Sylvia writes in her journal, I dislike being a girl, because as such, I must come to realize that I cannot be a man. In other words, I must pour my energies through the direction and force of my mate. My only free act is choosing or refusing that mate. And yet it is as I feared. I am becoming adjusted and accustomed to that idea. And so,
Oh my God.
I mean, she's
Must have been so lonely and hard to just be like, I am before my time, but I don't have the knowledge of the future to know that.
Right.
To like,
no.
I just don't fit here.
No,
Oh,
exactly. God. And I mean, she's so evolved and so young when she's writing these things too. And this is a quote from The Bell Jar when there's a character, Buddy, who is this guy. I think his name is Dick in real life that she dated. But she's talking about how she's annoyed because Buddy's always quoting his mother. And he keeps saying this thing that his mother tells him about a relationship between a woman and a man. And how his mother always tells him, well, what a man wants is a mate. And what a woman wants is infinite security. What a man is an arrow into the future. And what a woman is the place the arrow shoots off from. And then she says, until it made me tired. That's why I never wanted to get married. That's the last thing I wanted was infinite security or to be the place an arrow shoots off from. I wanted change and excitement and to shoot off in all different directions myself like the colors from a 4th of July rocket. And she also writes in her journals, I am envious of males. I resent their ability to have sex both morally or immorally and to have a career. I hate public opinion, encouraging boys to prove their virility and condemning women for doing so. So in short, I was not angry at Dick for seducing several women, but jealous that I had been denied the same chance by society.
Yeah. I mean, evolved is the perfect word for that because it's just like the perspective without having anybody else.
Yes.
Probably to hear that from, those are just your own pure thoughts. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she fantasizes a lot in her journals about being a man and visiting bars and brothels. It's just clear that she's like deeply upset by the injustice of the double standards imposed on women of her time. And this is sort of another time where she's like so wise and just, it's so clear that she understands this, and she's almost like sticking it to him when she says this. But she's having an exchange with a male companion of some kind. She has a couple of pen pals that she writes back and forth to. One of them she did end up meeting, and like they had all of these like great correspondence with letters, and then they meet, and it was kind of like, oh, you know, like people talk online. They meet somebody and they're like, oh. So I'm not sure exactly which one this was, but in a letter exchange between her and a male companion, he talks about trying to get her to forget about marriage and let's just go ahead and like have sex, basically. And he says, when he's talking about it, he's like, yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed now as I'm like recalling the letter. But in Sylvia's response, she says that she needs to remind him of the facts of life and that it's very easy for him to take that position, but she had to think about possibly becoming pregnant. And I just have here, it's interesting to me because even at that time, she was very aware of like that being her responsibility and hers alone. And it's still that way. We still put the responsibility of birth control and the forethought of that on the woman always.
Yeah, for sure. And that how like, yeah, having a child will stop any opportunity I have of pursuing my true passion.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
I have a child now and it'll be my responsibility. And so
absolutely.
goodbye writing altogether, you know?
No, I know. And then one of the other winners of the internship has a quote in the documentary where she says, "It would have been very lovely to be a man in the 50s, I should think. Men went to work and made the money and the women had the children. And it was very unusual for those of us who thought we could do more." She was kind of talking about Sylvia. Sylvia was incredibly ambitious, so she was open to a lot of experience, and she wanted to go to New York to be a guest editor and wanted to explore journalism and being a writer and wanted to explore being an academic. And that wasn't necessarily encouraged. And I think that's where a lot of that disappointment came in. You know, I think she thought she was going to go to New York and it was like her whole life was going to be set before her and she was going to see all of these possibilities and the possibilities were going to be endless and it was going to be all this opportunity. And I think it was a letdown.
Yeah. And like the letdown of all letdowns.
Yes,
too.
the ultimate
like,
letdown. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm going to get out of here and we're finally going to like do the thing that I've been waiting my whole life for. And
right.
Nope.
Right.
Yeah.
So this trip to New York really seems to be the catalyst for the onset of her mental health issues. It's also the inspiration for the bell jar. And the opening line of the book is, "It was a queer, sultry summer, the summer they electrocuted the Rosenbergs, and I didn't know what I was doing in New York." So that's the opening line of the bell jar, which she doesn't start writing until years after. And this is something she wrote in her journal that she does on like the last night that she's in New York. And I just think it's interesting. And I think it's, kind of a representative or a reflection of sort of how she feels after the month there. She says, and I think she's like on the roof of a building, maybe the hotel or the building they're staying in. And she says, "At that vague hour between dark and dawn, the sunroof of the Amazon was deserted, quiet as a burglar. In my cornflower-sprigged bathrobe, I crept to the edge of the parapet. At my feet, the city doused its lights, and sleep its buildings blackened as if for a funeral. It was my last night. I grasped the bundle I carried and pulled at the pale tail a strapless, elasticized slip, which in the course of wear had lost its elasticity. Twice the breeze caught it, and I let go. A white flake floated out into the night and began its slow descent. I wondered on what street or rooftop it would come to rest. Piece by piece, I fed my wardrobe into the night wind, and fluttering like a loved one's ashes, the gray scraps were fed off to settle here and there, exactly where I would never know in the dark heart of New York."
Yeah.
So you know,
beautiful stuff.
Yeah, and of course it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but it feels a little defeatist to me.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I was going to come here and leave with a sense of direction, and instead, here I am feeding my wardrobe piece by piece into the night sky and just like letting it float off to wherever. I think it was sort of a feeling of like just indirection and a little bit of desperation of like, what was this? And like, where do I go from here? You know?
Yeah. And is there anywhere to go?
Yeah.
Where I can fulfill what I want to do with my life?
Yeah.
You know, like
And-
if you can't do it in New York, where
and-
else can you do it?
Exactly. And as a woman, do I actually have any control over the direction, or am I just a piece of wardrobe in the night wind?
Drop in the wind. Yeah.
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 Okay. So when she returned home from New York, to finish out the summer before returning to Smith, she should have felt exhilarated and excited for the future. Instead, she felt overwhelmed and more uncertain than ever. And this is when the first signs of the depression that plagued her for the rest of her life really became evident. And it is interesting because I think we know now that the early 20s are often the onset of mental illness. We see that a lot. And I think sometimes there's a specific event that it's, congruent with. And sometimes I think it seemingly just happens out of nowhere. It seems like this New York trip should have been like the ultimate validation and shined a light on a professional path for her. And instead it just kind of overwhelmed her and filled her with self-doubt. And I think she began to question her purpose. Instead of seeing a path forward, it presented this like feeling of uncertainty and fear of failure. And I think, self-doubt is something that we struggle with so much as women. Even now, I can't imagine what it was like 75 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, they didn't have the language for mental health disorders back then. I would imagine
No.
anxiety wasn't a thing people were diagnosing
No.
or understanding about themselves. And yeah,
Absolutely
just,
not.
yeah, the hopelessness must have been, and just confusion to be able, like, to be feeling so many different things, not having a place to put them or
Yeah.
another person to confide in about
Right.
them or relate to you on that level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so she returns home from New York. She's home at her mother's house. Her depression symptoms presented as both psychological and physical. She was unable to sleep, eat, focus on her work. Things that she enjoyed before, like reading and writing and studying, felt like burdens. She started to kind of become withdrawn and disconnected from her family and friends. And of course, this was the 50s. No one was talking about mental health, just like you said. We didn't even have language really to talk about it. There was still a huge stigma. And there was also this fear of like, even kind of one whisper and you pretty much got sent off to the asylum, especially women.
Oh my gosh.
Or
You had a
lobotomized.
period. Yeah. You had a period and you got sent away to the loony bin.
Yeah. So upon returning, she's in this really dark place, and there's and this is trigger warning, and I'll put this, in the description and up top of the episode, but there's going to be talk of attempted suicide. Her eventual death is by suicide, so that's not for you. Log off. So upon returning, she's in a really dark place, and there's a few suicide attempts. At the very least, suicidal ideation that she's acting on to an extent. And I'm a little unclear on the timeline of some of these, but it seems like they all take place kind of around the same time. So when she came home from New York, she comes downstairs at one point to her mother with a razor in her hand and says something like, "Let's end this together." And so her mother's like, okay, like she had kind of been noticing some of the previous symptoms, and she's like, okay, it's time to go see the doctor. So she goes to see this man doctor, Dr. Gordon.
This man doctor.
He basically says, well, she's mildly depressed and needs electroshock therapy. Never asked her a single question. Didn't administer
Oh my God.
the shock therapy correctly or safely. The treatments were expensive, and Sylvia began to feel like, A, this isn't working, and B, like I'm just a burden. So
This isn't working. It also is extremely painful and horrific.
just electrocuting her. Yeah.
God.
Oh my God. So in a letter to her friend Eddie Cohen, who's one of her like pen pals, I think she did end up meeting this guy, but she writes how she knew the only option was how and when she would commit suicide. She thought the only other alternative was spending her life in a mental hospital. She wanted to use her last ounce of free choice to choose a quick, clean ending. And there's a scene in the bell jar where Esther swims out with a friend and tries to drown herself, which this happened in real life. And the guy that it happened in real life with is in the documentary, and he's kind of recounting what happened. And he says he had the intuition that Sylvia was just going to keep going out and intended to drown. Like, he could tell that that's kind of what was going on, and he got scared, and so he made a comment to her about how he didn't know if he could get back without her help. And so she did eventually turn around and swam back with him. And she writes in another letter to Eddie about her frustration with the attempt to drown herself, saying, "The urge to life, mere physical life, is damn strong. I felt as though I could simply swim on forever. The body is amazingly stubborn when it comes to annihilating itself to the directions of the mind."
Ooh.
Oh, I have goosebumps.
Wow.
Chills. She talks about another attempt where she pulls a razor out in the bathtub and she's looking at the skin of her wrists. And she says she simply couldn't do it because she has this feeling that what she wants to kill isn't in that skin. It's something much deeper, something secret, and something much harder to get at.
Oh, man.
So she's really in agony. I mean, she's really in the throes of it, just in a really dark place. And then, so it, again, I'm not super clear on the timeline. It seems like these are all kind of taking place around the same time. But then in August, while she's at home before she goes back to school, she takes a bunch of sleeping pills and hides herself under the house in the crawl space. And there's this massive search effort from the family, the community, the police. It was in the papers that she's missing. It took 3 days for them to find her. Her brother finally finds her underneath the house. And, you know, there's this huge stigma, and there was talk of the stigma running so deep that it, like, affected the entire neighborhood. And I think her mom was, like, really embarrassed by it. And there's references in the bell jar about her mother having to be the mother with a daughter in the asylum. So after this, she's treated briefly at Massachusetts General Hospital, and then she is transferred to McLean Hospital, which is like a prestigious psychiatric facility, but it's essentially an asylum. And she's there doing electroconvulsive therapy, psychotherapy, taking medication. And that's where this Dr. Ruth Bauscher comes in. And I think she actually helped Sylvia. She was the one overseeing her treatment there, and she was a bit of an expert on the intersection of creativity and mental illness, and she helped Sylvia work through her feelings of her father's death and her relationship with her mother and how those things contributed to her mental health. But again, I don't think she ever fully dealt with her father's death. I mean, that just like really carries on through her entire life. That and this basically feeling like she's trapped in a prison of being a woman.
It's just so sad to think about like how many women in history have felt that way.
Yes.
You know,
there's a friend of hers that went to Smith with her that's in the documentary, and she makes a comment talking about how open and honest Sylvia was about the vastness and darkness of her depression, and how through conversations that she had with Sylvia, like she knew that Sylvia said like she would not live through it again. If it showed itself again, that would be the end of her. So she kind of works through it, I think, with this therapist at McLean, and you know, she's feeling good and she's able to return to school.
So that's interesting that she can like, she realizes that these are like bouts of depression.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it.
She comes in and out of.
Yeah.
And she can like
Yeah.
post those that like realize what it is, kind of.
Yes. And she
Yeah.
literally made these comments like through her writing and through conversations with her friends, being so open about it and saying like, if this happens again, like I won't live through it.
Yeah.
I won't make it through it again. So she returns to Smith College in February of 1954 after completing several months of treatment. In this final year and a half at Smith, she produces writing works that show a new depth of maturity that reflected her experiences with mental illness and recovery. She graduates summa cum laude in 1955 with another full ride scholarship to continue studies at Cambridge University. So she goes to Cambridge, Newnham College at Cambridge, which was one of two women's colleges. She's an English literature major. And in 1956, she meets Ted Hughes, the young English poet, at a party for a literary magazine. Their meeting and encounters have become among the most famous in literature, mostly due to Sylvia's vivid entries in her journals, specifically of the evening they met. It was an intense love affair of artists, both inspired by one another and fueling each other's creativity, all while caught up in an intense intimacy and passion. So they meet in February of 1956. In June of 1956, they were married. They're writing poetry and living their life in England. She graduates from Cambridge in 1957. In the summer of 57, they begin plans to move back to America so Sylvia can teach and he can establish himself as a poet in the American market. He was like already kind of gaining recognition in England. And he's, I think, one of the most famous poets, both in England and here too. I think he has a little more credibility in England, but anyway, Sylvia accepted a job teaching freshman English at Smith, her alma mater. The job proved to be demanding, and the workload of preparing lectures and assignments and grading papers left her with little time to work on her own writing. She brought the same perfectionism to teaching that she did to her work as a student, and it took a toll on her physically and mentally. Ted was also kind of struggling to establish himself as a foreign national looking to infiltrate the American literary market, and Sylvia was supporting them financially, of course. Right? Like he's now not only like has she had all of these doubts about like, can I do anything as a woman? She's now teaching at Smith College and supporting her husband's dream of becoming a poet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who has every opportunity. Yeah. God, typical.
Oh dear. Okay. So with the mounting pressures of teaching and marriage, she decides to leave Smith after only 1 year because she realizes the workload is not compatible with her ambitions to become a professional writer. And like she's still determined to pursue this. They live in Boston for a little while in America, and they're going to support themselves as freelance writers. And this is when she starts writing The Bell Jar, which takes place back in New York in 1953. And at this point, it's like 1958. So 5 years removed from the New York experience. Ted gets published with a book of poems. They spend 2 years in Boston, and then they decide, okay, we're going back to England. And I didn't do a ton of research on this, but I think it's because Ted just like wasn't as popular over here, you know? And like his ego couldn't handle it.
Yeah, Ted couldn't cut it.
Ted couldn't cut it, so they had to go back to England. So in 1960, she gets a full-length book of poems published, her first one called The Colossus, and establishes herself as a professional writer. She's writing poems. She's working on The Bell Jar. Ted is becoming a famous poet back in England. They have their children, Frida and Nicholas, in 1960 and 1962. Okay, so the affair, the end of the marriage, the abuse allegations. Their 6-year marriage fell apart primarily due to Ted's affair with their friend and fellow writer, Assia Weevil, Assia. I'm not totally sure how to pronounce that, which I had to read about this. None of the documentaries talk about this, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, interesting.
And I mean, they were mostly like highlighting Sylvia's work and her life. So like, sure, like they just didn't want to get into like the gossip, I guess.
Gossip.
So I'm not totally sure how to say this woman's name, but which ultimately led to Ted leaving his family. The separation and events surrounding it were marked by profound distress for Sylvia. They had hosted David and Assia for a weekend in May in 1962, and shortly after, Ted began an affair with Asia. It can't be Asia.
Can't be Asia.
Asia. When Sylvia confronted him about it, he refused to end the relationship. In letters to her therapist, Sylvia wrote, she alleged that Hughes was emotionally and physically abusive toward her, including an incident where she alleged he beat her for days before she miscarried in 1961.
Oh my God.
She also wrote a poem called The Jailer in 1962, which the speaker condemns her husband's brutality, and it's widely thought to be about her and Ted. It was written the year the couple separated following Ted's affair. The poem portrays the speaker as a tortured, imprisoned victim and her husband as the sadistic captor. The poem is filled with imagery of emotional cruelty, domestic suffering, and unequal power dynamics, which mirrors the distress she felt in her marriage. Lines referencing being drugged and raped and being burned with cigarettes are often read as extreme, visceral manifestations of her husband's abuse. Other scholars, particularly feminist analysis and critics, argue that the poem is more than just a confessional account of her marriage. They view it as a broader feminist critique of how mid-century societal institutions forced women into domestic prisons completely dependent on their husbands for identity and survival. The poem relies on a cycle of suffering, ending with the speaker's haunting realization that the tormentor's power depends on the victim. So, it's not super clear what the catalyst is for her next depressive bout, which does end up being her last. One could argue that it's the years of potential abuse from her husband and then being left for a friend, and that part we at least know is true. I don't know how much evidence we have as to whether or not he was abusive. I think it was very common for that time.
Yeah.
I also think there were probably a lot of egos at play, them both being writers. He's living out his dream as this, a celebrated poet, and she's now stuck in this domestic prison that she was always so afraid of.
Right. Yeah, like, I loved you until you were more successful than me, and now I'm jealous and angry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so following the separation, Sylvia moved back to London. They had been living in London, and then they had their kids, and they were living somewhere else in England. So she moves back to London with their 2 young children. And tragically, just a few months after that, it was like a brutally cold winter in London. They called it the Big Freeze, I think. There was a lot of power outages and just, miserable cold. She died by suicide in February 1963. And they're interviewing that friend of hers that was talking about how honest she was about the vastness and darkness of her depression, and how that if it happened again, she wouldn't live through it. And she said she was at a party for her husband's 30th birthday when she got the news that Sylvia had died by suicide. And she said, or maybe even just that Sylvia had died, she may not have even known yet at that point. And she says, I remember thinking it must have happened again.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Dang, yeah.
Okay, so some of the Ted controversies. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding him after her death. And we'll talk about kind of her works in the order of publishing. I know I talked about her first book of poems that got published. The Bell Jar was published before she passed away. But so Ted has been condemned repeatedly for burning her last journal. His argument was that I know.
What a dick. Sorry, that just
No, I know.
late response, but it just kind of sunk in.
No, I know. He didn't want her children to have to read it. Okay. I mean,
Sure.
I know. And and who knows what was in it. Whatever. I just feel like it wasn't his decision to make. There was another
Just hide it, Ted.
No.
Put it in a drawer.
I know. There was another journal that he supposedly lost. And then there was an unfinished novel. He has been accused of attempting to control the estate for his own ends. Because they were still legally married when she passed away, her whole estate, all of her work, all of the rights to that work passed to him. He has remained largely silent about all of this until 1998, when he publishes Birthday Letters, a collection of 88 poems addressing Plath, his relationship with her, and her suicide directly. And during all of these years, I mean, the feminists were really coming for him. I mean, blaming him for the death. I mean, there's a lot. And there's a lot of works that have been written about it.
Oh, wow.
A lot of angry women. Okay, so he publishes this Birthday Letters, and nobody knew he had cancer at the time. He died like pretty shortly after this. And he really tries to reframe the narrative. So in poems like The Shot, Hughes portrays Sylvia not as a victim of his cruelty, but as a woman structurally consumed by the childhood trauma of her father's death. He describes her as a high-velocity bullet aimed at her dead father, arguing that any man who got in her way, including himself, was merely a casualty of her inevitable psychological self-destruction.
Whoa.
He frequently positions himself as a helpless bystander, trying to protect her from her own inner demons. And so he really goes all in on the mental illness, which, sure, I mean, she had a mental health crisis far before she ever met him. Okay, sure. I don't think he's necessarily the catalyst for everything, but I think he probably played a role in the final moments of her life, I would imagine. So
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like he had a lot of empathy for her.
No.
And the struggles she was going through.
No. Naturally, Birthday Letters tops the bestseller charts, wins several awards. Of course it does.
Course, yeah.
Including the Forward Poetry Prize, the T.S. Eliot Prize for Poetry, and the Whitbread Poetry Prize. So she has the Colossus published, which is her first book of poems, and the Bell Jar are both published before she dies. Her posthumous publications, a second book of poems, Ariel, was published in 1965, 2 years after her death. However, it's claimed that Ted made substantial changes to the manuscript, changing the intended order of poems and dropping and adding things entirely. In 1971, the volumes Winter Trees and Crossing the Water were published in the UK, including some of the things that were missing from the original manuscript of Ariel. In 1977, a collection of short stories, other prose writings, and diary excerpts was published by Faber and Faber, called Johnny Panic and the Bible of Dreams. The collected poems published in 1981 contained poetry written from 1956 until her death, and she was posthumously awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. In 2006, someone from the Virginia Commonwealth University discovered a previously unpublished sonnet and published it in an online publication. And then heavily abridged versions of Plath's letters to her family, mainly her mother and brother, were published in 1975. 2017, 2018, 2 new volumes of letters were published. So, I mean, certain things have been coming out and being published, especially since Ted's death, as they've been discovered or, rights. I don't know how all that works. Probably the rights become available and they're able to publish things. And then, of course, this most recent full book of poems in May that does include never before published things. So, I mean, that's kind of it.
Man, what a tragic tale.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew obviously that she committed suicide and a little bit about her,
Right.
That she was a poet, but I didn't really know anything about, her childhood, obviously,
Right.
or her marriage. Yeah.
Anything you would have known about her was just always overshadowed by, oh, that's the woman that put her head in the oven,
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, yeah, mental health issues obviously could have existed even without the constraints of being a woman at the time she was alive, but it makes so much more sense,
Yes.
Knowing all of those feelings and thoughts she was having about not being able to live a fulfilled life.
Exactly.
I'm sure countless women felt the exact same way.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, Well, I mean, I'm sure many didn't even have the opportunity because it wasn't even, she was obviously such an evolved mind.
Yes.
Who, could think outside of the box, and how many women weren't even given that opportunity?
No. No, I know.
Because they weren't educated.
Just like such an impressive and fully developed perspective, so ahead of her time, and just such a loss. I mean, when you think about, arguably one of the most important literary voices of the 20th century, and the fact that because she was a woman, that wasn't nurtured the way it should have been, and it wasn't allowed to flourish. And what an enormous loss for us as a society. I mean, just so sad. And yeah, I'm sure so many women felt that way and didn't even know how to articulate it, didn't have the language to be able to talk about it. And here she is at like 11 years old, 14 years old, writing these things in these journals that women who've lived their entire lives and experienced this for 50, 60 years don't even really understand it. And here she is, a girl.
Yeah.
And understands it, the power dynamics and the limitations of her choices. And I mean, it's wild.
Yeah. And obviously I'm making a little bit of an assumption here because she never stated this verbatim, but the idea of not having the privilege of a woman example before you,
right,
of seizing opportunity and having opportunity and being able to live out your dreams,
yeah,
imagine living in a time where that wasn't available to you,
right,
because it really narrows your dreams.
Yes.
If you can't if you don't have an example to build off of
or to aspire to. Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, I know. And obviously this isn't a profound thought, and I said it before, but I think about this a lot. Just like we've talked about it before on the podcast, of just how many women are victims of their time. And it's just so sad to think about like how many incredible people have existed, creative and ambitious people that have existed over time that weren't able to realize their
full potential.
Yeah.
Or any of their potential. No, I know.
Yeah, and I mean, and she did to a certain degree.
She did to a certain degree.
I'm not saying she didn't have an impact, because she certainly did. Had a handful of really incredible things published, so it's not like she didn't do anything. But
no, I know.
Just imagine, how much more she could have done if
she'd been given the opportunity, and how maybe different her mental state would have been had she had more freedom in her life. And again, like we said, it doesn't necessarily mean that, and that's kind of why I said in the beginning, like sometimes I think there's an event that happens and then you have the onset of these things, and sometimes I think it does just happen. I think that there's a hereditary thing, there's chemical imbalances, there are things that happen regardless of outside circumstances. But I think hers is an example of, I do think that those outside circumstances of feeling imprisoned really fueled a lot of her depression and anxiety. And it's
hard to think it didn't have any effect.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, coupled with not processing the death of her father and all of that pressure to succeed, and then realizing like, even if I put everything I have into it to succeed, the world's not going to let me succeed except through a partner, which is what she's saying when she makes that statement about, the only way for me to succeed is through a man, and my only choice in it is whether to accept or refuse that man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild. And then she ends up with what seems like an egomaniac writer.
Right.
And then she has to watch her dream being lived out by him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, that would be really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that would just be like, that's a cruel joke to be like,
Right.
yeah.
And then
Like,
she
my
just ends
husband's
up
work-
in the domestic prison that she always kind
Yeah.
of knew was set before her.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Man.
Oh dear. Well, anyway, we're way over time, so
Well, that's okay. It was really interesting.
yeah.
Great job on telling the story.
Thank you.
Makes me want to go, and I've read some of her poems. My mom had books of her poems, but
Yeah, that's a very Sheila thing to have.
yeah. Oh yeah, she had Ariel in hardback, so I've read some of those poems, but I'm definitely gonna read the Bell Jar now.
Yeah,
though,
me too. I
for
know.
sure.
I'm excited. Well, that documentary was good. If anyone, I would recommend that one over the other one that I watched. Inside the Bell Jar came out in 2018. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, it's only like an hour
I'll
long.
have to check
So
that out. Oh,
Yeah.
perf.
all right.
Nice.
Should we gripe and
well,
gripe?
Thanks for that. Yeah, let's gripe and gripe.
Okay.
My gripe goes out to when you're in a public restroom and it flushes before you're ready.
Oh, I know.
Like and it splashes you with water. It's so gross.
Yeah.
It's like, come on now.
No.
Or you like stand up and it's like,
For sure.
oh God, it's the freaking worst.
Yeah. No, agreed on that. My gripe is going to the super annoying dad that was sitting next to us at a restaurant when we were in Colorado. And just to paint the picture, like he had on a Yale lacrosse hat. I don't know. I mean, whatever. But it was him and his wife and their son. And you could tell that he just liked to listen to himself talk. And he's like jumping from one conversation to the next about, well, you know, the more degrees you have, the more people will pay you for your services. And maybe you should think about this. And like, oh, well, we call that gross negligence. And he's like talking about all these things. And then at one point, he literally says this. Well, you need to make your money work for you. You know, like having money at Morgan Stanley. He's like, having money in an account at Morgan Stanley is like having a slave. Your money's working for you 24/7.
What?
He said that. And the wife, this was the part that was kind of funny. The wife is sitting there and they have this little dachshund. And the whole time she's not saying anything to the father or the son, to her husband or the son. She's just obsessing over the dog. Can I get a bowl of water for my dog? Oh, can I get just a chicken breast with oil and salt and pepper for the dog? And then the dog's like under the son's chair. And she's like, now be careful. Don't put your chair on his foot. His foot's right there. The mom has
Oh my
clearly
God.
disassociated from the husband and the son, and is just her whole life revolves around the dog. She can't stand to
Yeah.
listen to the husband speak. He won't stop speaking. The kid was probably
God.
like 11. You know, like,
Oh wow. Yeah, he doesn't care about Morgan Stanley.
oh
Let him-
my God.
Wow,
Most
the slave
annoying dad
comment,
of all
though.
time. I was just like,
Whoa.
I cannot believe that these people exist.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Ugh.
that's my gripe. Colorado dad, that's
That's-
my gripe. Yale dad.
Colorado Yale dad. Yeah.
Yale lacrosse
No
dad.
thanks. Yeah, don't talk about slaves in public.
No.
Don't talk about slaves like that ever, but certainly not on the train.
Certainly not, on the patio of this restaurant.
Or, yeah, I don't know why I said train.
My gripe
Um,
is simply going to Colorado summers.
Nice, yeah.
Just fabulous.
I've never experienced one. I was going to say you can't beat them, but I've never experienced one. But it sounds like it can't
You'll be
beat.
experiencing it next year. Yes.
Cool. Good. Okay, my grape goes out to, I made a peach galette for Father's Day,
Excuse me?
which is
Come
like...
again? A galette?
A galette is kind of a galette. Yeah. It's like a pie, but it's like you don't make the top part and you just kind of fold. You like roll out dough. You put your peach or your pie filling in the middle,
I've
and then you just
seen
kind of
that.
roll up the sides.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So delicious. I got peaches from the farmer's market.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It really hit. It was just fantastic.
Nice.
A lot easier than a pie because like you have to make less dough and you just kind of like
Right.
smoosh it together and you're like, that's it.
That's it.
But that's it. It's done. But I by the end I was like, I should have made a pie because we ate that galette and like
And it was
they're
gone.
smaller.
There's no
so
second.
there was no leftovers. Yeah, I was like, dang it. But it was really good, and I was like, I got to be making more summer pastries,
I do love a peach cobbler.
capitalizing on this fruit.
I usually make a peach cobbler every year. I didn't make one last summer. And, you know, it's because I missed, you know, when the peaches come to Rural King? Have you done that before?
Oh yeah,
They bring
from
them
South
up from
Carolina.
Georgia to Rural King, and they sell them
from
out of the backs
Georgia.
of these trucks. And I usually get
Nice.
you have to buy a whole box though, and it's like 40 peaches. So
Yeah. Did you know? I feel like Georgia always gets the fame for being the peach, but South Carolina is actually the biggest producer of peaches.
Oh, is it?
In the country. Yeah, I didn't know that.
know that
until I
either.
lived in the Carolinas. Yeah, because in South Carolina they have this like, I can't remember what town it's in. Is it Greenville? This huge peach water tower. Like the top of it is a big peach, but it looks disgusting because it kind of looks like a big ass or vagina, depending on
It can't be an ass.
But it's like painted. The way it's painted is it kind of looks like an infected butt. It's really gross, actually. But apparently, South Carolina is actually the peach queen.
Well, maybe they named
So I don't know
Georgia
where-
the peach state before South Carolina was the peach queen.
Yeah, maybe.
I have no idea.
Maybe. I don't know all the history, so I'll have to get into that, I guess.
Yeah, can you research that for the next episode?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
we'll do.
All right.
Well, this was fun. I missed potting.
I know.
With you.
Well, we'll be at it 2 days from now.
Perfect.
We have a fun guest
Good,
for
good.
everyone. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Bye.